Hi everybody, and welcome to Module 4. This is the module where we start in on various approaches to educational psychology. Like many other fields, educational psychology is one where people tend to look at the same phenomena with various lenses, and depending on which lens you're looking for or looking through, you'll be able to see different things, and you may interpret the same phenomena in several different ways. It's an interesting way to think about it. So when we think about approaches to educational psychology, let's see if we can make a turn. This is an interesting diagram, and I'm not sure I entirely buy it, but we're going to think about it anyway. At the top, we have a very standard dichotomy from nature to nurture. And I think at this point, there's not a lot of disagreement that both of these things come into play when we're looking at human development. But approaches vary in the emphasis they put, more to nature or more to nurture. And this slide puts various approaches to psychology on a continuum, from the biological, which focuses on genetic or in some cases evolutionary psychology, that says basically we are pretty much determined by our nature and that will shape our behaviors. And at the other end, we have behaviorism, which is kind of a strange thing to associate with nurture, because I guess I don't think of behaviorism as a particularly nurturing approach, but maybe that's just me. Behaviorism, as you are probably familiar, says that everything that we know is learned in response to stimuli external to us, that we learn from our environment, depending on whether we have positive or negative interactions. And then the remaining three general approaches, psychoanalysis, which we're not really going to deal with in this course, cognitive psychology that deals with inherent mental structures that are shaped by the environment, and humanism that looks more at a continuum of physical, social, and emotional needs, are put in this order on this list. I'm not sure that that's exactly 100% accurate, but it's close, and it's a way to think about it. And in fact, another diagram does something kind of similar, although they don't put the nature-nurture arrow up there, which I think is just fine. It talks about major approaches, but they reverse it. They've got the neurological, biological approaches on this end, and the behaviorism at this end, and then give us a diagram of the major players and some of the key constructs that go to each approach. And it really is interesting. For example, the field I'm most familiar with, as I've told you before, is creativity. And you can look at behaviorist, cognitive, psychoanalytic, humanist, and neurobiological explanations of creativity. The behaviorist explanation, for example, talks about creativity as being absolutely in the control of the environment and the interactions. In fact, I think I have a piece in the behaviorist module that we'll look at that talks about Skinner, who wrote a piece called On Having a Poem, as one would have a poem as a chicken would lay an egg. And it goes all the way up to neurobiological explanations of creativity within the brain, humanistic explanations that have to do with how far up Maslow's hierarchy we have managed to get ourselves. In any case, in this module, we're going to be right squarely here in the orange area, where we're talking about cognitive psychology. And in particular, we're going to be talking about two key cognitive psychologists, Piaget and Vygotsky. And if you've ever taken a course in psychology before, you are probably familiar with these names. Just because you're familiar with the names, you may not know the faces. And so I thought you might like to see those. Here's Piaget, looking very scholarly with his pipe. And we know that Piaget's approach to psychology was rooted in observations. He watched young children. He set them tasks. He set them problems to solve and watched to see what happened, starting with his own children. And so I thought it was kind of fun to see a picture of Piaget observing. And then the second of our cast of characters for this week is Vygotsky. And here he is looking sort of very To me, he looks very Russian in that picture. Now, perhaps that's because my husband's relatives are all Eastern European, and he kind of looks like some of his old family pictures. But you can see Vygotsky here in his sterner moments and then in his happier moments, where here he too is observing children. But whereas Piaget was more interested in watching children interact simply with the environment around them, Vygotsky, as you can see, is looking at the social interaction between this adult, possibly a mother, certainly some familiar adult, and this young child. It'll be interesting to take a look at those things and see how these two important and related theorists are both similar and different. We'll take a quick look at our module here, and you'll see that you'll be watching the introduction, which isn't posted there yet, but it will be. You've got a couple of different things to read, both of which give you introductions to these major cognitive theorists. And then you've got some nice videos. It's fun to see things play out in real life. So you've got some videos on Piagetian theories. You've got a video on Vygotsky. And the short assignment that you'll have this week asks you to take a look at the two and see if you can distinguish which characteristics and constructs would be more Piagetian or more Vygotskyan. And finally, we're going to have our second of the conferences that I'm leading. Hopefully we will have smooth sailing and be ready to discuss the article. Again, you'll have a doodle poll to help you figure out when the conference will be happening. Make sure that you've completed your organizer before you sign on to discuss in the conference, because if you haven't thought those things through before the conference, it's going to be much more difficult to participate. I'll look forward to talking to you.